Hello, folks, and welcome to the Linux Users Group, or I should say the Internet Linux Users Group. Today, we're going to be talking with Tyler about drivers, folks. Sorry about looking away from the camera there. I was making sure my mic was correct. Anyways, folks, today, me and Tyler is going to be talking about drivers under Linux, and that should be a quite interesting discussion. Today, we're going to be talking about why they work, why they don't work, and so that should be quite informative. But anyways, what is the Linux Internet Users Group? This is my little spiel of information I provide at the beginning of each and every meeting. Well, we are a group, just like any users group, that is here for the user to try to give information, to try to collaborate. We're a very new group, so you should totally go down in the links below this video and join. And if you're watching live, those links will be in the recording. And you should join us if you want to do speaking. We do have guest speakers. Tyler's a guest speaker today. If you'd like to be a guest speaker in next week's meeting, for example, feel free to request being a speaker. There's a form on our website, which again will be in the link below this video. Once it's posted, you can go to that website and you can go into the speaker form and submit that. Please note, speakers must be at least 18 years or older to speak. That way we don't have to deal with any parental consent or anything like that to get you on as a speaker, because you're going to be on YouTube and everything. We don't want to have to deal with stuff like that. So sorry for the 17-year-old that wants to talk about programming. I just use that as a edge case. Just wait a month or whatever. Anyways, so today we're going to be talking with Tyler about drivers. So Tyler, we're going to be talking about drivers today, right?
Yes. Yes,
Yep.
we are.
Yep.
And
Tyler, you've had a lot of issues with drivers, right?
Yes. Many
issues with drivers, folks. Now,
mostly older legacy stuff.
Yes, the legacy stuff generally is what you have issues with under Linux, and I would say probably under other OSs as well to a certain extent. But what I have noticed is Linux has gotten a lot better in the legacy aspect. For example, I have a really old NVIDIA graphics card on one of my machines, and it seems to be pretty happy. Like it detected the drivers, and I installed them under Ubuntu, and I was good to go. Like there was no issues. Everything just worked. And then NVIDIA pushed a patch and broke it. But that's NVIDIA's fault. So.
Yeah, we can't really blame Ubuntu for things NVIDIA does.
Exactly. But yeah, you're right. Anyways, folks, that right there is the wonderful Tyler. And I didn't think to introduce you. And so Tyler is going to be talking about drivers today, which again, as I said earlier, he's had a lot of issues with. I seem to have had mostly good luck with drivers. Really, the only issues I've had with drivers is I had a laptop I wanted to put CentOS on, and CentOS is basically a spin of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. It's a Red Hat Enterprise Linux compatible is what it is. And some of the stuff I do with weather needs to be done under CentOS or Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So I went under there and I on that laptop and installed it, and everything worked fine except for one thing. The Wi-Fi, for whatever the reason, would not work. But then I installed, let's see, I think I put Debian on there and it worked, and then I put Ubuntu on there and it worked. So obviously CentOS just did not have the drivers, because they hold things back 25,000 years. But we're not here to talk about CentOS today. I'll have to do another talk about that or something. And you can hear me complain about CentOS for an hour. But anyway, so folks, we're going to be talking about the good and the bad. And, Tyler mostly represents bad luck. So anyways, if you're watching this live on YouTube and you have a comment about the broadcast, feel free to get in the chat and say hi and say, tell us your experiences. Tell us, did you have issues with this? Did you have issues with that? As always, you can ask questions in the chat. Towards the end of the meeting, if there's any questions, generally we will try to answer those questions. And each meeting lasts about an hour. So, if you want to watch the whole meeting, sit back, relax, get you a soda, and enjoy an hour of us talking about Linux here and Linux-related things. Yes, yay. So anyways, Tyler, just to start off, you have had a lot of issues with drivers, right, over the years?
Yes. The first issue I ever had with drivers was, as you've had, Wi-Fi.
Yes, that's a common one. What was it, on a laptop, I'm assuming?
Yep. Always fun.
laptops are the worst for
Yeah.
Wi-Fi driver issues. The desktops with the Wi-Fi ones, I have not seemed to have noticed as many issues. Maybe that's
Yeah.
just because I don't have as many of those, because most desktops don't have a wireless card in them. But it seems like those seem to be better supported for whatever the reason. But I've had some friends with desktops that have Wi-Fi that have problems on there. So I guess I've just not ran into those issues myself, but I guess they do exist. But yeah, the Wi-Fi issues are real bad. So, what was your plan of action in attempting to solve those issues?
First off, I looked to see if that even had it, which was the issue. It didn't even have it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I first tried to see if somehow it was just not activated, but no. So then I had to go grab myself an Ethernet cable and just connect directly up to the Wi-Fi, connect directly into the system and just download it manually.
Okay. So you was able to actually get it to work. Did you do what did you do? A compile from source, or like what was your plan of action in that environment?
My plan of action was to Google it and figure it out, but I was trying to install it, but I could never figure it out. Then I realized there was this thing called extra drivers, which is a very useful thing when it works.
Yes, and
When you
folks, for those that don't know what he's talking about, in Linux, there is some Linux distros, particularly ones based on Ubuntu and Ubuntu, that have an extras repo, an extra repository, and those usually contain drivers, among other things. So I think that's what you're referencing.
Yeah, the English is failing me.
That's okay. You could always speak in another language. I'm sure we have viewers in other languages.
I don't actually know any others.
Neither do I, but I'm sure that somebody does.
Yeah, somebody. Who though?
Don't know who they are, but somebody knows other languages, right? So, but yeah. So, anyways, Tyler. So you've had issues of Wi-Fi drivers, which I think a lot of people have had that issue over the years,
Yeah.
including myself as well. Have you had issues with graphics card drivers? I've seen some things with that a lot over the years too.
You don't even know. Yeah. So I have a few like really old graphics cards around here, like literally HD 5000 series. Like right here, I got a 5450, and then somewhere around here, I got a. Yeah, it's a Radeon HD 450 from. Oh no, this one says AMD. What? I thought, whatever. It was around the time when AMD required ATI. And then I have an
Okay.
ATI Fire Pro somewhere in here.
Now, I haven't heard much about the Fire Pros under Linux. How well does that work?
Well, if you have the drivers, it'll probably work really well, but considering this thing didn't have any drivers.
Folks, pay attention to that sentence there. It would work great probably if it had the drivers. It's a sentence I think we all have thought or said at least once.
Yeah, I mean, it works good considering that the default drivers that come with Ubuntu actually do work for it, but there's like no customization options for any of this stuff. It's all like as if you were to have Intel stuff like back in Windows XP era.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, I mean, the driver situation under Linux, I think we can all agree, is still one of the major issues Linux has got to work on, especially on older legacy hardware, which a lot of the vendors are getting better about. I mean, you look at the older NVIDIA cards and stuff; those work pretty good under Linux these days. Most of them. I think it's an NVIDIA something 310 or something, like it's really old, and it works fine.
I think I have a 4. I forget what I have. Yeah, it's actually like. Mine's actually only like a year older than yours, I think.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you don't have issues with that card, huh?
No, it's where is it? A GT 430.
A GT 430.
Yeah. I don't actually know when this thing was made because it's a GT line and it has 2 gigs of RAM, so it shouldn't have 2 gigs of RAM considering it's the cheapo line.
Yes, yeah. So, anyways, the drivers, like I said, you've had a lot of issues. Have you heard about a lot of other people having driver issues? And also, have you ever had to support someone that has driver issues? You know, do you have somebody that you have to support that has a lot of driver issues? Or is that just something I have to deal with?
It's mostly things that you have to deal with. I don't really know many other Linux users.
Well, I generally put people. So I manage computers for a lot of people. I generally put them under either a Chromebook or, just regular Linux, depending on the use case. Generally, if they're a geek, they're under regular Linux, and if they're not, they're which I don't actually help. Most of the geeks I help generally, it's a different dynamic, obviously. But like for people like my mom, she's on a Chromebook, so for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Because some people just, this is nothing against my mother, but some people just, they are not technically sophisticated people, and they can get
Oh,
themselves into trouble if they aren't careful. So you really need to put them under a Chromebook if you really want to keep everything locked down.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So any other examples of driver issues that you can give as an example here to the audience that they might experience?
He would be my friend. Because he switched from Mac over to Ubuntu, but I don't know if it's a driver. It's probably a driver issue, considering the fact that it's just not liking him. Period. But
Yeah.
basically, he's getting like 1/10 of the normal performance that his Mac used to get.
So he's running Linux on his Macintosh.
Yes.
Now, what do you know? What Mac it is that he's running it on? Is it a MacBook? Because I've tried to run Linux on a Mac as well. It's a MacBook, just a regular MacBook or a MacBook Pro.
MacBook Pros. No, I don't think it's a MacBook Pro.
Well, I've tried to run it under a MacBook Pro before, so and I had a lot of issues, but I'm not really sure why. So, but I try like with my Mac, when I try to run Linux on it, which it's out of commission now, but when I tried to a while back, I tried a couple distros. The only distro I could ever get to work was built on top of Android, so it was a little different. But it actually did run. I had to run it off a USB key because there was no drive in the machine, but it functioned.
Okay, so maybe it has different instruction sets. Maybe that's it.
I don't know. I mean, it's the Macs are Intel based, so I would think the instruction set would be the same. I'm a programmer, but I don't program that low levels to actually know. But I would think the instruction set, because from what I understand, the instruction set for Intel CPUs are the same for that model CPU, regardless of where it is, from what I understand. So I would think that that would mean that would not make a difference. But I may not know what I'm talking about because, again, I am not a low-level programmer. That is that's not something I really know enough about to really comment on.
Yeah.
So that is not something I can comment on. But I'm sure.
I broke this one.
I'm sure that that is something that. Sure, that is something that you could definitely probably see happening. Is them having a different instruction set. Maybe they make like a custom model of the processor. I don't know. But from what I understand about the Macs, it's just the off-the-shelf Intel stuff. So I would think that would not be the case. But I don't know. Maybe Intel
hardware.
Yeah, I mean, Intel does their instruction set is partially alterable from what I've heard from their firmware versions. So maybe they push a special firmware patch to the Mac so it has the firmware different or something. Who knows? But from what I've heard, most people have no trouble installing Linux on a Mac. So I think I, again, just had an edge case, right? I mean, it was an old machine. It was on its last legs. There was probably plenty of other reasons that Linux had nothing to do with that. It just, it's like, kill me now. I'm done. I can't even go on, right? So it probably was more of that. But I think the driver issue under Linux, we really need to work on it. And if you ask me, the driver issue, one of the things we really need to do is we need to go to the vendors and we need to say, listen, Linux is big in the enterprise. Linux is big in the server market. And you really need to start actually acting like that it exists a little more, because some of the hardware vendors do not seem to care about doing support. And some vendors do really good. I mean, you've got vendors like System 76 where that's all they do. They don't even support Windows. You've got vendors like Dell which support Linux really well. I've got a couple Dell machines, and they are the easiest, other than Lenovo's, I've seen to run Linux on ever. In fact, Dell actually produces drivers, at least for my particular machine, for everything: the motherboard, the graphics card, everything. Like, just their modifications to work with them. Yeah, it's really great support. I have no issues. They actually have their own repo under Ubuntu, and they're like, all you got to do is add a repo and then just go sudo apt install, I think it's like Dell DAS drivers or something like that, and it will install all your drivers. It's easy.
Okay, that is is too easy. Dell, thank you for showing
Thank
us
you,
how
Dell. Thank you,
easy.
Dell. Yes. Yes, this is not a sponsored broadcast about Dell, but it should be.
Yeah,
Dell,
hashtag not sponsored.
hashtag not sponsored, hashtag call us. Yeah, let's sponsor this, right? Did I mention we will take sponsors? If you've got $1,000,000 and you want to sponsor this, I don't know
Yeah.
why, but if you want to, call me. We can work something out. We can be like, this program is probably sponsored, insert name here, right? This program is sponsored by insert name here. So we could totally do that for you.
Name here.
Yes, exactly. So we'll just use a cookie cutter template. Oh, well, we want to, so be easy. So, but yeah, anyways, the Dell support is wonderful, and the System 76 does the same thing. The only thing about Dell is I don't know if they do that for all their machines or just some of them. Now, I've got one of their XPS line, which is they're geared. They're more higher end machines, mainly geared towards engineers, developers, people that are more likely to be running Linux, right? In fact, actually, the XPS models, did you know you can actually order them with Linux pre-installed? You can order them with Red Hat, pre-installed. You can order them with Ubuntu pre-installed, and I forgot. I think there's like one or two other versions of Linux you can have pre-installed on there. So if you want Linux pre-installed on your Dell box, if it's an XPS, I know for sure you can do that. I'm not sure. I think they only do it on the XPSs where they do the pre-installs. Like I don't think like the lower end Dell machines they actually offer that for it, but you can at least do that on the XPSs. Which I have to say I've had an XPS. I got one of their XPSs 13, one of their XPS 13s or something. Oh, I know, not sorry, that's their laptop. I got one of the XPS 8700s. That's what it was. And a couple years ago, and I have to say, it's a very nice machine. I have really no issues. Well, I do now because I had a fan go out on it, but it's been in service for like multiple years without really that much of an issue. So really the only issue I have on it is not Dell's fault, and that is that I run like 1,000 VMs on it, and and I run out of RAM, but that's not Dell's fault. I can put more RAM in it.
Why are you running so many VMs?
Because I'm a nerd and I'm a developer and I want to test things under 20 different OSs just because I'm bored sometimes. So, yeah. And so, but my point is that, yeah, it needs more RAM. And the other thing is Chrome. Yeah, guys, if you ever use Chrome, trust me, you know what I'm talking about. It uses a lot of RAM. And
you need RAM. If you run Chrome, you need RAM. There's no way around it.
Oh, definitely.
Run out of RAM.
If you use Chrome, I have actually made machines crash with just Chrome on it, taking up all the RAM. Nothing else running. Just Linux and Chrome with a bunch of tabs, and it's like 100% RAM usage, can't go on. So, to be fair to Chrome, though, I will say this to Chrome. It's a lot better than it used to be. I'm at the point now where I can have a large amount of tabs and a Chrome browser and a system can handle it. I've got my XPS has got 8 gigs of RAM in it. I can easily support a couple hundred tabs without having problems. So, and I do that all the time. You're probably saying to yourself, but wait, why do you have a couple hundred tabs open? Well, I'll tell you why. Because I have a lot of different developer docs and stuff I need to look at. There's all these different things, and they're all a web page, and I need all these different things open based on what I'm doing. So I could very easily have a good 20 or 30 tabs open just for one project. And I will routinely work on 2 or 3 projects at a time. So I'll be like, okay, I'm working on this. Now I got to wait for something to compile well, actually it's Python, so it doesn't compile, but I'm waiting for something to, if I make a binary, it's compiling, but you don't have to make a binary. With py installer, folks, you can make a binary of a Python program, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But that's pretty quick anyways, usually. But no, the thing is, if I'm busy working on another project, I usually have like 2 or 3 projects. So I'll work on this, then I'll switch to this, then I'll switch back to this, right? So I have like 3 projects or something. And so I'll have like a bunch of tabs related to each project open. And then, of course, I'm also usually going to have a tab open listening to music, because when I'm programming, I like to listen to music, or I might have a YouTube video playing in the background. So before you know it, I got a lot of tabs open, So
3 minutes later, you have 15 tabs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the guy or the girl that opens up their computer. Web browser is the very first thing I open, and then I open like a million tabs almost immediately.
Okay,
It's like I have so many tabs. It's not even funny. I had one person a while back say, I was screen sharing with them trying to help them with something and showing them how to do something, and they said, "You got an awful lot of tabs, man, open." And I'm like, I'm like, I haven't had this computer on very long. This is actually a small amount of tabs for me. Wait until it's been running for about 6 hours and then look, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Like, this is nothing. Like, this machine's been running for not that long, and I've already got like probably 100 tabs open. And they thought that was a lot. And I'm like, that's nothing. I opened so many tabs, I can't even see what the tab is. Like, you know how Chrome, you can't see the tab name and stuff unless you hover over it at a certain point, or the icon, because you have so many tabs open. My Chrome
Yeah.
looks like that most of the time.
Oh my goodness.
So, what can I say? I have to say, I would be a good candidate for a Chromebook in a lot of ways, because Chrome is
Maybe
my
even a
main
Chromebook
application.
Pro at this point, because with that many tabs, I can see where that thing gets its use now.
Yes, you can. It's me. It's for me. They developed that just for my use. Like, Vincent
Just
uses
for
a lot of
people
tabs.
like you.
And just for people like me, yeah. Because I'll tell you, I'm not the only one that does this. A lot of people pretty much live in their browser, and there's so much you can do in the browser these days. I mean, there's not much you like. For me, what I need on my machine, what I need on my machines is three things: Discord, which I use for communication, for other programmers and my friends. I need my web browser for watching YouTube videos, Netflix, Hulu, looking up code notes, and then the only other thing I need is a terminal. That's it. You give me those three apps, I'm pretty well done.
You can even have a terminal inside of Chrome.
You actually can. That's true. I've actually done that on a Chromebook before. You can get a Linux shell and set right there and run Linux commands. In fact, funny story
there's an
about
extension just for it.
Yeah, there is. And actually, it's a funny story about this. So, as I said, my mom had a Chromebook, and I had the need to put a SD card image on for a Raspberry Pi a while back, and I couldn't do it. So here's what I did. I couldn't do it, and so here's what I did. So I used the DD command from a shell on my mom's Chromebook, and I was able to write the image right there because it was the only computer that was nearby. So I borrowed her Chromebook, and I said, okay, well, here's what I'll do. That had an SD card reader, that is. And then what I said I'll do is, okay, no problem. I'll take her machine, I'll download the Raspbian image, right, from the Raspberry Pi website, and then I can use the DD command to write it. And it worked perfectly. I opened the shell up in the web browser, typed in the standard DD command. It was already installed for me. I went ahead and give it the image path and looked up the particular drive I was writing to. I think it was like /dev/SDC or SDB or something like that. And just the standard format you got for drives. And I sat there, and about 20 minutes after I started it, because it was a slow machine, it was done. And then I plugged it into my Raspberry Pi. Done.
Fine.
And it worked perfectly. So you can do an awful lot with a Chromebook, but I still prefer to have just a regular Linux system for everything. But I will say this: I am thinking about getting a Chromebook just to take with me, because one of my concerns is I have a lot of like programs and stuff that I write that I don't want to give out. So I don't want those to be like easily accessible. So I won't keep those on my laptops for that reason, because if I was to drop the laptop or forgot the laptop at a friend's house or something, they could, in theory, get the programs, right? And these programs they're used for processing alerts and everything, and I just don't want them to get in the wrong hands, because in theory they could be used maliciously, right?
Yeah.
And so I just want to, for that reason, I want to be careful. And so I generally don't take those on laptops. But what I really would like to be able to do is have a Chromebook, because when I'm out and about, I want a computer that if I drop it and it breaks, that I'm not going to scream. Right. I want a machine where when I'm out and about, the only time I need a computer is to like Google stuff, so like Google stuff, that kind of thing. So I'm thinking a Chromebook would be perfect for that, because then I don't have to worry about losing a really expensive, nice laptop, or forgetting it, or somebody trying to steal it from me. Because if it's a Chromebook, big deal. It's like, oh, you stole a $300 Chromebook, whatever, I'll just go buy another one later, right? Or whatever. And the other thing with the Chromebooks is you can remotely erase those. So which there's not really much on them anyways, but like you can remotely log out and erase anything that was stored locally, because you can store stuff locally on them. But most people don't do that, because they're not very. You can't store much unless they have a large drive. Some of the larger Chromebooks, like some of the like higher end ones, do have like a decent drive in them, because you can store stuff offline on them. But generally, people don't do that. But if you don't store stuff offline, it's still going to clear out the temp files and everything, and it's still going to log you out and everything, so they can't like get into your Google account. So just think about that. That right there is peace of mind, right? I mean, if I take a regular Linux laptop and I leave it somewhere.
Yeah.
That's got my LastPass on it. They can get all my passwords from that. I'm done. They have everything. So that is really bad for security. So that's one of the reasons the Chromebook is appealing to me, because if I take it somewhere, And the other thing that's appealing about them is they're very fast to boot, right? I mean, all they're booting up is a web browser effectively, right? And a very lightweight version of Linux to run it on. So at the end of the day, it's not really, you're not pushing the machine very hard to do that. And so my thing is, if I have a Chromebook, it's going to boot up really fast. And the other thing too is, if I'm using a Chromebook, the other big thing about a Chromebook is, with a Chromebook, you do have one other really big advantage, like I said, if you ask me, which is that everything's in the cloud. So if you do, for example, drop the machine and break it, and the hard drive gets destroyed, big deal. Chromebook is the only thing on there. Go get a new Chromebook or go somewhere else and log into your Google account, and there's all your stuff again, right? And so whatever, and I'm aware that there's some privacy concerns about that, but I don't want to use a Chromebook as my daily machine. That's one of the reasons. That and the fact that there's some things that just hard. That and the fact that there's just something that's hard to do on a Chromebook, like writing a Python program on a Chromebook. It's possible. It actually is possible. They make Python IDEs where you can actually run Python in Google Chrome. They actually do make those, but it does limit you from what I've seen and what you're able to do. But for somebody that's just learning programming and all they have is a Chromebook, it's definitely a great way to start. Because you don't have to buy anything. But I would definitely, especially for a professional developer, you're really wanting to be on Windows, Mac, or Linux to be a Python developer. But if you ask me, but the thing is, you can, like I said, do that. But the thing I want a Chromebook for is just for when I'm out and about, right? When, I have a machine. All I'm going to need when I'm out and about every time, all I ever need is just a web browser. That's it. I can easily be fine with that. Again, as I said, I live in a web browser. And the thing is, you can do so much in a web browser these days, between HTML5, WebRTC for like calling in the web browser. So you can do like Skype calls now and Discord calls in the web browser and everything. There's really not much I can't do from a web browser. So if I've got my Chromebook with me, that I'm acting like I have one for myself right now. But if I had a Chromebook and somebody needs me to talk to them real quick on Discord, I just go to discordapp.com, log in using the web version. No big deal. I can set right there, start a call with them and have a conversation. I've actually done that on some machines that are not Chromebooks, because I didn't have Discord on that machine and I needed to talk to somebody real quick, and it works fine. So it just proves the point that you can use a Chromebook to get most things done. And I would say a normal person can easily do that. Anyways, back to the driver thing. So the Chromebooks actually is a great example of drivers under Linux, though, if you think about it. They come pre-installed and it works wonderfully, right? I mean, if you've ever picked up a Chromebook, that's a Linux machine effectively. It's a very stripped down Linux machine with just Chrome on it, pretty much. But it is technically a Linux machine. It's running, what is it running? I think it's like a version of, I want to say Gen 2, but it's not Gen 2. Manjaro. It's running on a version of Manjaro, I think. But like a customized version. But the thing is, that's what Chrome OS is, from what I've been told. But anyways, you have the drivers right there, right? You don't have to install the graphics drivers. You don't have to install the motherboard drivers or anything, or the audio drivers or whatever. It's all there, right? Every time I've ever opened a Chromebook, it's simple. You open it up, log into your Google account, the drivers are ready, the browser's ready, everything works. So in a way, we already are there with Linux. If you're using a Chromebook, right, it works.
Yeah, we already are all using Linux, somewhat.
Well, most websites run Linux, so for their servers. So, I've said this a lot over the years to people when they say they've never used Linux. I say, you just lied to me, because that sentence is not.
Wait, here's the argument. Do you have a phone?
If it's an Android phone, you're running Linux. If you've ever went to a website, there's a good chance it's running on Linux. I think it was about I think it's like what, 80% or so of the websites, if I recall correctly, that's on the internet, their servers are running Linux of some form. So if you went to a website, you're using Linux. You don't know you're using Linux, to be fair, but you are. My websites are all hosted on Linux, obviously. Obviously. That would be really funny if I was hosting them on Windows Server.
Oh, dear Lord, no.
You know what? That should be my next.
Wait.
That is next year's April Fool's prank. That's next year's April Fool's prank for the Linux users group. I'm going to put on the bottom of the website, and I'll have it say, "We are powered by Windows Server." I wonder how many emails I'll get that day. Have you lost your mind? And I'll be like, "No, April Fools." So,
dear God, that was loud.
Yeah. So, but yeah. Anyways, But yeah, I mean, if people say they've never used Linux, but they have. A lot of kiosks run Linux. Some ATMs run Linux. Some point of sale systems now run on Linux in stores. There's a lot of Linux around. If you have an IoT device, a lot of those run Linux. And I'll tell you something else that runs Linux that a lot of people don't think about. Did you know most of the set-top TV boxes also run a form of Linux?
Oh, the what?
Most of the set-top TV boxes that you hook up your TV actually run Linux. Do you know that? Most of them
Really?
do.
Like even
Yeah.
basic ones?
Well, I don't know about all of them, but I do know that a decent number of them do run Linux under the hood. So
Oh, yeah, smart TVs I'm pretty sure do.
a lot of the smart TVs do. The Roku box, which is a very popular set-top box, that actually runs Roku's OS. Which, guess what? It's based on Linux. And how do I know that? Go under a Roku if you have one. Go to the license section, and guess what? One of the included base software is the Linux kernel, and it actually gives you the full GPL license too in the format of the Linux kernel. Blah blah blah. The GPL, GPL license too for the Linux kernel is right there. You can read the whole thing, and so it's very clear they're based on Linux. Like they're not even hiding it, right? And one thing I thought was funny is they actually have there's an open source text to speech system on Linux called Festival. I've used it before. It sounds horrible, but I've used it. I think eSpeak sounds better than it, if you ask me. If you give it like a
Or
long
some
sentence
people
to
write
read, if you give it a long sentence to read, it makes it sound like it's really hoarse. Like the voice is really hoarse at the end. Sounds good at first if it's like a short sentence. So I guess the moral of the story is use Festival to read like really short sentences, like maybe like a person's name or something only, but like in an IVR in a phone system or something. But here's the thing: they are using Festival on there for some reason because they have the Festival as one of the listed pieces of software that's installed on their version of Linux. And I'm like, okay, let me get this straight. You installed Festival, and I'm thinking the only reason I can think of you would want a text-to-speech synthesizer on a set-top box is for accessibility, right? But if somebody can't see, they can turn on accessibility, and as they go to different menus, it can be like home, Netflix, right? And kind of read what you're on, right? So oh, I'm on the Netflix app, and then you can scroll through the TV shows, and it will read a TV show to you, and then you'll be like, oh, I'm on Stranger Things, Breaking Bad, whatever. I'm making up different shows
Game of
here that you can
Thrones.
get on Netflix, right? Game of Thrones. I don't even know if that's on Netflix. I guess it is. I feel like it would be, but anyways, yeah.
I'm
So
pretty
I
sure
feel like
that's
that's the reason for
yes.
using that, but I wonder. You have any idea why they would use it other than accessibility, or
Um weather alerts?
I don't, the Roku doesn't have anything to do with those, as far as I know. I've never. Uh,
National alerts?
I don't think the Roku responds to any cap alerts or anything. I'm not sure of that. Um, that's actually something that I thought would be an interesting idea to actually build a Roku app, because I'm also a developer that builds Roku apps. I generally just build them for myself, but um, uh, I built a Roku app a while back. I just build really basic ones. I'm not like an expert at it. It's more for experimentation than anything, right? But um, the thing is, I wonder, and I've wondered about this for a while. I don't know enough to know if it's possible, but from what I've Googled around, it's not. What I think would be really cool is if you could actually, as an app developer, like scroll text over the video, like a scroll bar, and then like have a process running in the background checking like the cat feed for like the NVS, and then if there's an alert for the county that the Roku's setting in, it can just scroll the alert text over the video feed. That's something that I would want if I was using a Roku, because as somebody that pays attention to the weather, that would be great. If I'm sitting there watching TV on a Roku and then tornado warnings issued or something, that would be great, because then it could just scroll by and be like, oh, okay, I know. Of course, I have my weather radio to activate, which you can see in the corner up there. And then I also have all kinds of other ways to get weather alerts as well via the computer. So I do have plenty of other ways, but it's just like, why not one more? But yeah, so drivers, that's another example of good drivers too. Look at the Roku box. That's Linux. You don't see it making you install drivers for it to display the video or anything, do you?
Yeah.
So this just proves the point. You can do really good drivers on Linux, and some do. Like we got Dell that does good drivers. We got Roku that does good drivers. And so you probably thought I was going off on a tangent, but believe it or not, this actually all makes sense. It all connects, doesn't it? You've got the Roku, you've got the Chromebook, you've got the drivers. They all interconnect with
Yeah.
this issue right at the end of the day. And so
I was
these,
completely thinking you were just like halfway forgetting we were talking about drivers.
At first, I did as well, and then I realized they were all interconnected, and that's why I was talking about them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have to say, I think that driver stuff with those particular platforms prove it can be done well, because I have never had problems with drivers on a Roku, and I have owned a Roku. Well, actually, we've owned several Rokus here in our house for a long time, for many years, and really had virtually no issues with drivers. In fact, I don't recall us ever having issues with drivers. The only thing we've ever had issues with the Rokus on is they'll break after a couple years. Just they randomly just die one day and they won't boot up ever again. So that happens after usually about 2 or 3 years of use, and we use our Rokus like crazy. So 2 or 3 years of use out of a $40 box, that's not that bad, right? And it works great those 3 or 4 years, or well, it depends. The boxes I've seen, most of them last about 2 years, 1 to 2 years, but that's still not bad. I think that I think they've improved that in their later versions of the Roku. But anyways, the drivers are just really good on those, right? You don't have any driver issues, right? The Roku people make sure that their drivers work, so that when you boot up your Roku to watch TV, you don't have to install a video driver, because that would be really annoying. And most people probably would be like,
Having to install a video driver on a Roku.
I don't even know if it's possible. I would think that, because they lock the OS down so much because they're so scared you're going to try and steal the video somehow. And I'm like, that's what the HDMI video out's for. You could just record that with an HDMI recorder. It has to be HTC. What is it? The not HTC. There's a special code for the HDMI copyright protection stuff. HTCP or something like that. And if you have a capture card that supports that, some do, you can record that. So I don't even know why we got into this discussion, but whatever. But anyway, so the thing is, the drivers, like I said, the Roku people, they do really good with the drivers. Maybe that's partially because of the copyright stuff, because they don't want you to be able to actually install anything. But I think it's more because they know that they want their customers to have a wonderful experience. They want them to make sure everything works, right? And it's the same thing with the System 76 people. Pogo Linux, I think they do something similar, which is another company that sells machines with Linux on them, mainly servers for the Pogo Linux people. And then you've got Dell, which again does that. So I think we are seeing a change. Hopefully, we'll get to the point where driver support is a lot better under Linux. I think we've gotten real close, because I generally don't have that many driver issues these days. My issues these days. Excuse me, under Linux, my issues with Linux these days are very far in between. I very rarely have issues with anything. Most programs I want, they have a Linux variant, so it's easy to go out and install it. No big deal. Linux, the playing field with Linux, Windows, and Mac is really equalized at this point. I don't feel like Linux is a platform where it doesn't have as good a software or less software than Windows or Mac. Really, my biggest complaint, and this kind of goes into drivers, I guess, depending on, I mean, it's graphics related, so I guess you could relate this to graphic drivers.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
One of the things that drives me nuts with the Linux distros is, one of the things that drives me nuts, and I'm curious if you've ever had this issue. You're not a programmer, so probably not, but maybe you ran into it when you were trying to install some of these programs or something. But something I've noticed that's really annoying is every version of Linux seems to do things ever so slightly different when it comes to libraries, right? So it's like, okay, so I've got a Python program that's a GTK GUI, let's just say, for example. Now, and I don't actually build my GUIs, most of them in GTK, and this is actually one of the reasons why. Because every Linux distro ships a different version of GTK, and you got to work around that. And the GTK libraries, some of them ain't even available for Python, depending on the OS. Like, for example, CentOS, I cannot get for Python 3, which is the latest version of Python, at least the last time I checked, the GTK GUI. I can't get the library you need to be able to program a GTK GUI from Python. So that means if I'm expecting my users to be on CentOS, I either have two choices. I can either say, don't use CentOS, use something like Ubuntu that does have that library, right? Or you use an older GUI library that looks like crap that is available. And what I have chosen to do, because most of my applications are targeted at CentOS anyways, is I just say we're going with a crappy looking GUI, because the functionality And the reliability of CentOS is very important to our operations and what we do at the Bangalore network, which is the CentOS stuff I'm relating to. So, but that's an issue that I have noticed a lot with Linux distros is they will ship different versions of libraries, and that can
Yeah.
cause problems. So again, they do have GCK support under CentOS. We use CentOS 6, and the thing is, under CentOS 6, they only support GTK under Python 2.7 and 2.6, and that's old. That's very old.
Oh,
They
that
don't even
just sounds old.
Python 2.6 is so old it is end of life. And Python 2.7 is going to be end of life. I don't remember when. I think not too long from now. I think a year or so from now. I think they're end of lifing 2.7 as well, something like that. So 3 is going to be
Oh,
your only
that sounds
choice,
fun.
right? And so the fact that they don't even under CentOS 7, which is their latest version of CentOS, they still do not support under Python 3 the GTK library. That's going to cause problems, right? And
Yeah.
so that's why I write my GUIs under CentOS on tkinter, which is a GUI engine that is non-standard in the sense it's not using GTK and it's not using Qt, which is the two standard GUI frameworks under Linux, right? The GUI toolkits. And so I can't use Qt under my apps because of the way they rate their licensing. It gives me problems with licensing. I can't use GTK because I don't have it. And so really it only leaves me one choice, which is use somebody else's GUI toolkit that's on standard. So tkinter works great. And I have to say, if you ask me, tkinter is a better GUI framework than GTK in one way, particularly. And that is, even though it looks horrible, and that is under Linux, that is, it looks great under Windows and Mac. They really, if they'd make it look as good under Linux as they do on Windows and Mac, I have no issues with using tkinter. I'd be happy with
Yeah.
it because, and a lot of people don't like tkinter. Because they say, they're like, I would much rather design the GUI in an actual program. But I'm like, no, because with tkinter, you actually put the GUI in the code. You actually write the code to produce the GUI. And I prefer that. To me, I can do that much faster. If I use a GUI layout tool, it takes me 3 or 4 times the amount of time to do the same GUI. It's very annoying. And GTK, you can do that from the code, but if you want to do a complicated app, it's very hard. Under tkinter, they make it easy to do a complicated app from the code because that's pretty much the only way to do it. There is like some third-party design tools for it, but that comes all back to drivers, which is, if you ask me, I know drivers and libraries aren't exactly the same thing, but it comes back to dependency problems is what it really comes back to, which is a pain. Right? Dependencies are the worst. You ever install a program on Linux and then it gives you the dreaded message, we couldn't install XYZ dependency because we can't find it. So the program won't
Yeah,
run.
that's never fun.
And then you have to go Google searching all over the world to try to find this library that somebody wrote in 1992 and nobody uses but this one program, and you got to find it, and then you got to compile it from source, and then you can't compile it from source because it doesn't support the version of GCC. So then you have to learn the language it's in just so you can fix it so it works with the current GCC. Then you got to compile it. Believe it or not, I have actually not went that far myself. I give up before I go that far. But I'm sure somebody's actually went that far before. And it just proves my point with the dependencies, which drivers are a dependency, right? I mean, you got to have your drivers and to be able to display things, to be able to get your motherboard to work, whatever, and correctly. And so the library is just, it's the same kind of thing. And the fact that we do dependencies in the way we do is a problematic. And actually, one question I have for you, because one of the ways that a lot of the developer community has tried to solve this quote dependency problem is we just make a gigantic blob of all the libraries in it, and then that's what you run, and then it's like, oh, well, that's easy. And so we give you what would have been a very small file, just a binary or the source code to run, and then compile it, right? And we turn that. I mean, if it's Python, it's interpreted, so you just run the source code easily. Or you can make a binary of it if you use py installer. But depending on the language, you have to compile, like if it's C or C++ or something. But here's the thing. The new strategy is you've got, what is it called? App images. That's one of them. And then Ubuntu has something called snap packages. And then there's one other type that's out there. And basically what they do is they roll up everything it needs, all the libraries and everything, this big blob. And then they're like, download this and run this. And it works, yeah, but it makes us have gigantic programs, and it's like, that's one of the things that really drives me nuts about Linux is they make you, everything's dynamically linked. The libraries are, right, on site.
Yeah.
And to be fair, Windows does this too. So this isn't a Linux only issue, but I think Linux
An OS issue.
well, yeah, I mean Mac does this to a certain extent too. So I guess it's horrible no matter who's doing it, I guess is what I'm getting to. There's really no platform you can go on that this is not to a certain extent a problem. But I will say this: generally, it's not as much of a problem on Windows or Mac, at least from what I've seen, as it is on Linux. And I'm a big fan of Linux. Let's be clear, but I criticize anything, even if I like it. I criticize it for its need to be criticized, right? Where it needs to be criticized. And the thing is, Linux, because we dynamically link everything, I understand why we do it because it's like we don't want to have 20 different copies of the same library on a machine because all these different versions of programs use it. But then you have the problem of, well, this program needs version 3, and this version needs version 3.2, and this version needs version 3.4. So you still end up having that problem. And then you have the other problem where you run into Linux distros that don't ship that version of the library. Like CentOS, where it's like they're in 1999, and it's like, what library are you talking about? We don't ship that. It's like that library is literally like 6 years old. You're telling me you don't have this? Like, I get it. If it was a library that had been released yesterday, I get it. It's going to take a while to get it in the repos. But come on, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, whatever, and it's still not in there.
Like
That's
what
really
is
pathetic.
your programming team size? One person?
Yes.
Wait, seriously?
Yes. So I do have a few people that will help me occasionally with debugging or something, but it's generally just me. But the thing is, it's really annoying when it comes to these libraries, and this just all comes back to the dependency issue. So what do you think about the app images? Do you think that that's a good way to solve it? Is just let's just bundle up all the libraries into one big gigantic blob, and then just say, here you go, run this? Or
no, because the names even change over time. Like, really? You're gonna change the name from a capital to a lowercase, and it breaks everything.
Yeah, you're talking about like package names. So you're not getting what an app image is, because see, an app image, it actually includes the library, the exact version that the programmer is using. So like if I'm using 20 different libraries, the exact versions I'm using is what's going to be included in that app image.
Yeah, that's a much better idea.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, but we're
keep the stuff working.
I mean, it does keep it working, but it wastes a lot of space. It really does. Yeah. And creating an app image is not the easiest. Creating an app image in some languages is not the easiest in the world. For example, in Python, it's hard to create an app image. Some languages, that's really easy. Like if you're using Node.js and you make an Electron app, which I also write some of those, it's really easy. You like run one command and you sit there for 5 seconds and you've got an app image. So if you're in that particular develop environment, wonderful. Make an app image. That's what I do. It's like, that's easy. Then I just say, here, you're on Debian, it will work. It's on Ubuntu, it should work. It's on whatever, right? The one thing I will say is the app image for Electron apps will still not work under CentOS 6. That's the only place I have found they don't work. And they claim the app images will work everywhere. Other app images work under CentOS 6. But for whatever reason, the Electron app ones don't. It will, and they don't have a version of Electron for CentOS. So my guess is that it's the binary, the way they've built it or something, prevents it from running under CentOS 6, because it does under CentOS 7. And I guess the moral of the story is a lot of people say is, when I run Electron apps, just move to CentOS 7. Yeah, but I don't want to move to CentOS 7. Everything works under CentOS 6. Don't break it if it's working. So
Ubuntu developers, please take note.
Exactly, yeah. So that's one thing I will say that I like about CentOS, though, just talking about CentOS here for the last couple minutes of the meeting. CentOS, folks, I have to say, it is a pain to get working, get everything installed the way you want. But once you do that, it is rock solid. I have CentOS machines that will not have issues for months at a time, easy. Even Ubuntu is not as solid as that. It's good, and I use Ubuntu on a lot of my mission critical stuff. But when you're airing alerts, you really need that to be on something that ain't going to have even the slightest issue. And I have to say, that's something that CentOS and the Red Hat Enterprise Linux people, they do really well. You get everything working eventually, and it works. And I think one of the reasons it works so well for them is the fact that they hold everything so far back on there. The packages, all the libraries and everything. I think that's one of the reasons it works so well, is because they don't update everything, as far as, if you're using a library that they update all the time, they freeze it, and that's where it stays for pretty much its whole life under CentOS, or very close to that version number. And so you don't generally have bugs in it. So, CentOS has been out. CentOS 6 has been out since like about 2010, 2011, something like that. The libraries are almost exactly the same from then. And so, from
CentOS
what I
7
can
is,
tell,
and they've had CentOS. CentOS was back in 2006.
I'm talking about CentOS version 6. Version 6. That came out in about 2011, 2010.
Oh,
And yeah, not the first version. No, I ain't using one that old. The one I use still has support. It's not end of life yet. When it's end of life, I will be moving to CentOS 7 at that point, which it doesn't end of life for a few more years. So, but anyways, so the thing is CentOS. I think that's one of the reasons it's so rock solid, because they hold stuff back so far, right? Think about that. Most of the stuff that's on there is from about 2010, 2011, 2012 or so.
yeah.
No wonder it works so well, because any bugs that would have been found has been backported by now to be patched. So whatever was broke has generally been repaired. Under Ubuntu, under Ubuntu, they patch things like crazy. They run updates for everything. Now the CentOS people, they run security patches, but like feature changes they don't generally do. And so if there's if you have a library that has a security vulnerability, they'll patch it, of course, but they're not going to run. If you're on version 2.5, let's say, of a library, they're not going to move you to version 10 or whatever is out now. They're gonna backport the security fixes to protect that particular version. That's what they generally do, from what I have seen. And so they made it of everything, but from what I've seen, that's what they do. And I think that's why it's so reliable. So, it is hard to get installed. You do have your issues, but I think once you do, you actually get a better result as far as sustainability. But at the same time, I would not put a standard programmer or anybody like that under CentOS. I wouldn't. I would say don't use CentOS. CentOS is for your servers. CentOS is for your mission critical stuff. Develop on something else. Use something else for your personal stuff, whatever. And then if you're going to need something that's rock solid and it's going to be hard to get to work, but once you get it to work, it's going to work and you need it to keep working, that's what CentOS is for. That's what Red Hat Enterprise Linux is for. It's not for the latest and greatest, sadly, even though I kind of wish it was. Because of that same such reliability and sustainability. But at the same time, it probably wouldn't be very reliable or stable if that we did push so many things new into it, right? That's probably why it's so reliable as it is.
Yeah.
So, but this all kind of relates to drivers. And if you haven't got the memo yet, folks, we don't always stay perfectly on topic in our meetings. That's kind of normal.
What's the thing you call perfect?
So, folks, but yeah, like I said, we've been talking about drivers and Linux and everything. Let's see if there's any questions in the chat, folks. I don't think we have any questions today. We're still just getting started, so I don't think enough people know who we are yet to really be, paying attention. Generally, most of the viewers we seem to get on the meetings are after the fact and they're recording. Yeah, I am not seeing a single question. Okay, folks, if you're watching, this is the time to tune in right now and ask those questions. Well, you wouldn't be hearing me if I didn't say right now, Yeah, if you have a question about Linux or anything we just talked about, this is the time to ask, as we're about to wrap up. But anyways, folks, so that's my opinion on CentOS. What do you run your mission critical stuff on, just out of curiosity? What do you run your mission critical stuff on, Tyler? Or do you have any mission critical stuff?
Mission critical thing I have is like game servers, and I just run it right on Ubuntu because it's fairly reliable. I haven't really had many issues at all.
Okay. Well, I mean, a game server, to be fair, if that's the most mission critical thing you have, is not that bad, really, for a mission critical thing.
Yeah.
To me, I wouldn't even consider games a mission critical thing. I'm not a gamer, so I guess it's all about perspective, because you think that's mission critical. To me, mission critical is like transmitting alerts or something like that. That kind of thing. Or doing a video broadcast, something like that. Those are things we really don't want to fail.
Yeah.
If a video game crashes, does anybody really have anything that serious happen? Okay, yeah, we lost our place in the game. I play Minecraft and a few other games, so I do play a few video games. And if it crashes, I'm not like, oh dear, the world has ended. There's no hope for survival. It's more of a restart Minecraft type thing and move on, right? It's no big deal. It's like, okay, well, we'll just restart Minecraft, right? And if it crashes a lot, that's different. So you do want it to be stable, but if it breaks every once in a while, it's not that bad. So, but yeah, I think I think most people just don't have that much mission critical stuff though. So I think that's
Yeah.
probably why CentOS is really, it's a specific user market, right? I mean, if you have something that you definitely do not want to break, if you're running a website that needs to be up, you run it under CentOS because it's probably going to be up.
Yeah.
So, anyways, folks, I think that pretty well wraps up our discussion today. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning into the broadcast and coming to the meeting. If you would like to join the Linux user group, if you would like to be a speaker, you can find that information on our website, which again will be on the recorded version of this meeting here in a few minutes if you're watching live. And if you're watching the recording, it should be available below. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. Don't forget to use Linux. If you guys are watching this, you probably already are. And where can they find you at, Tyler?
YouTube, I guess.
All right. And what's the YouTube address for them to go to? YouTube.com/what?
User/1 second. I need to get there.
If it's a long URL, we can just put it in the description for people to click.
Yeah, pretty sure it's just the long URL if I remember right.
All right. Well, let's just put it.
But I don't even remember it at this point.
Let's just put it in the description for our audience in that case.
Yeah.
So, folks, Tyler's YouTube channel will be in the description below. So will mine, and the link to the Linux users the Internet Linux Users Group's website. We are still starting to grow. We are in need of guest speakers. If you would like to be a guest speaker, again, please go to our website and submit. You will need to be 18 or older to be a guest speaker. And to be a guest speaker, we prefer for you to have a camera. Today, Tyler didn't have a camera, but we worked without it as best we could. But preferably, considering this is a video meeting for the audience, it would be good so they could see you. So if you have a camera, that'd be great. Generally, our speakers, you can either talk with me and we can have a discussion kind of like me and Tyler did this week, or if you want to have something where you kind of speak more on your own, that's definitely fine. But do keep in mind that I will be chiming in and we'll be talking back and forth to a certain extent about your stuff anyways, just to keep it interesting for the audience. But, I can either chime in a little bit more or a little bit less, depending on what you were thinking. But preferably, I think it's best for the audience if we have more of a dialogue instead of a monologue. I think that's better for the audience.
We don't want no monologuing people in here. That never is fun.
Yes, monologues is the worst. There's so... And this coming from a guy that monologues a lot. So, but yeah, monologuing is the worst. I try not to do it, but sometimes it's easy to get into a monologue. But I try. If I do a monologue, I try to at least make it interesting for people. Try to get the audience engaged and ask for input from the audience or from other people in the room. But anyways, folks, or in this case, the virtual room, I guess you could say, in the Google Hangouts on air. So anyways, folks, again, you can go ahead and check out our website. This concludes this meeting. Thank you guys very much for watching and joining us at the meeting. Hopefully, in this next meeting, we will have a guest speaker again. We currently do not have a guest speaker for next week's meeting. So again, if you'd like to apply, please do so. If you don't, I will be the guest speaker because there is every once in a while I will be the guest speaker anyways because I'll just schedule to speak about different topics because I want to actually sometimes present things to people. But in here that's Linux related. But here's the thing. If there is nobody that's going to speak, that will definitely be one of those meetings. So if you guys get tired of hearing me talk, this will be the time to go to our website and submit a talk so that way that we can have a little bit less of me in that particular meeting. So thank you guys for watching and have a wonderful day.